I know we all want to thank Bob Lawrence for that. Captain William R. Brewster, Jr. Was the transformative third president of Georgia Military Academy and the first president of Woodward Academy. Words fail in trying to express the impact that he had on this school, the impact he had on me, the impact he had on literally thousands of colleagues and students, and an impact that continues to live on through this institution which he built. If there was ever a first son of any place, it was surely Bill Brewster. He was born at Fort McPherson in 1921. His grandfather, Colonel John Charles Woodward, had founded Georgia Military Academy in 1900 and was hard at work on building the school when he was born. His father, William R. Brewster, Sr., had been born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a descendant of the Adams family from Massachusetts. And after shaky academic beginnings, his father went on to graduate from West Point in 1920. He was commissioned in the Army. Shortly thereafter, he married Mildred Woodward, the oldest daughter of Colonel Woodward. In 1920, his dad entered the infantry school at Fort Benning. He remained there as an instructor until he was transferred to the Canal Zone, where he served as an Army officer until late 1925. And then in early 1926, his father came to Georgia Military Academy, serving as a history teacher, a math teacher, rising to become the commandant. And then when Colonel Woodward died in 1939, Colonel William R. Brewster, Sr. became the second president of GMA. So, from his earliest memories forward, Bill Brewster was inextricably connected to Georgia Military Academy. He watched the struggles of his grandfather and his father in building an institution that was growing in stature and prestige. His life lessons were embodied in the concept of duty, honor, and country. In 1937, Bill graduated from Georgia Military Academy and won an appointment to Annapolis. And he graduated from Annapolis on December 19, 1941, just days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. After graduation from the Naval Academy, Bill was assigned a succession of combat roles in the North Atlantic, in French North Africa, and then in the Pacific, where he was awarded a Silver Star, Bronze Star with a Combat V for Valor. And it's interesting to read the 3.5-page obituary, which many of you have seen and appeared in the Atlanta papers, an obituary which Bill wrote well before his death. But one of the interesting things, and I'll comment on several things about the obituary, was that in the 3.5-page obituary, more words are spent on his military career than on his 33-year career at Georgia Military Academy. Bill did modestly note in that obituary that his life's work after leaving the Navy was in private secondary and elementary school education, where, in his words, quote, he began his new career as a teacher of math and science, but during the next 33 years he worked up the administrative ladder and was the Academy's president from 1959 to 1979. My earliest memories of Bill date back to when I was probably a 10-year-old boy in the 1950s. Bill and my father had served in the Navy Both of them had served in the Navy in the Pacific during World War II, and both came back and were in the Naval Reserve. And so they spent weekends together at the Naval Air Station, which is now Peachtree DeKalb Airport. And Bill and my father became close friends. And as a young boy, I recall countless social engagements where Bill, Kitty, and their 3 daughters and my family would spend Saturday evenings together. Bill had a lot of impact on me, even had a lot of impact on my father. Bill was a beekeeper, and so he talked my father into becoming a beekeeper like he was. And our backyard on Clifton Road over near Emory was absolutely full of beehives and bees. I probably suffered some sort of record for bee stings as a young man, and by the time I was about 8 years old, I never went out of the house without shoes on. I was not a barefoot boy. And we would regularly share in the annual ritual of robbing the hive, harvesting the honey, putting it in all the jelly and peanut butter jars that we'd saved throughout the year, and then packaging up the honey for the Johnson basic Christmas present. Everybody would get honey, and it came from the hive that Bill split with my dad. As we spent time with the Brewsters, I could see my father's growing interest in having me learn to stand up straight, shine my shoes, march, and learn all of life's manly traits. And I recognized over a time that he intended to entrust me to his friend Bill Brewster to make all that happen. And so in the fall of 1956, I was enrolled at Georgia Military Academy in the 8th grade and entrusted to Bill and a host of memorable characters, some of whom are actually embedded in the minds of lots of folks who are representative of that period. People like Abe Ferguson, Carl Thielander, Colonel and Mrs. Russell, Doc and Sadie McKay, Lottie Wilson, Garland Watkins, Ted Hayes, and a host of others too numerous to recite. And over the next 5 years, they did what they could with me, but all under the watchful eye of Bill Brewster, who was by now Commander Brewster and later became Captain Brewster. During my 5 years at GMA, I would guess that I maybe had 10 minutes of conversation with Captain Brewster. But I knew that he was watching every move I made, probably personally choosing my every teacher. He felt a sacred duty to my father and mother and to me, as he did with every student entrusted to him, to provide every opportunity for every cadet. And he was personally responsible for that and engaged very directly in trying to make it happen. Bill's passion in life was transforming students one by one. And the result was some transformed students, grateful parents, loyal alumni, and a school of ever-increasing reputation and success. One of my GMA classmates, who's here today, B.I. Godwin, earlier this week sent an email to our class reflecting on Bill. He said in part, Bill Brewster had the phenomenal ability to remember personal details of every student who ever entered the gates of GMA. In our many, many conversations over the years, I never mentioned the name of a former cadet whom he failed to recall. And I will add this, the class of '61 was special to him. I think that this was due in large part to the fact that ours was one of the first classes to graduate under his tenure as president, and he took great pride in the individual and collective successes that the class experienced. I mentioned the many, many years. This is still B.I. Godwin talking. As a 17-year-old, I stood in awe of him. As a 70-year-old man, I look back on my relationship with him as an old and enduring friendship. Just as Bill had a plan to transform every student into the most that he or she could be. He had a grand vision for what the school could be, and he intended to execute every detail of that vision. In 1958, his father was granted a sabbatical by the governing board, and Bill was designated as acting president. While still in the status of acting president, he made his annual report to the board in 1959, and he noted that the academic achievement of the student body was lackluster. He noted that they were admitting students who they knew were not college material. And he noted that significant discipline problems were experienced from many of the weaker students. And he called on the school to focus on excellence. He concluded his report by saying, if we continue to keep abreast of the times, if we emphasize quality education, our success will be assured. Once elected president in 1960, upon his father's retirement, Bill began the methodical process of transforming Georgia Military Academy into Woodward Academy. In his 1964 evaluation of the school, he wrote, "We are not satisfied to be one of the best military schools. Our aspiration is to be one of the best independent schools." He moved carefully but purposefully. In May of 1964, he announced the admission of women to, quote, provide a more genteel atmosphere on our campus. And the real guts of it was, and to upgrade our academic program. Bill early recognized that if you wanted to increase academic quality, doubling the potential pool of smart kids by admitting women was an absolute necessity. But that, like so many other things he did, got pushback. In the mid-1960s, he realized and articulated the belief that for all the advantages of military education, and keep in mind that his grandfather had gone to a military college, his father had gone to West Point, he had gone to the Naval Academy. For all of the advantages of military education, there was a severe cost. The daily military training consumed precious hours that prevented adding to the curriculum the courses needed to meet the rigorous admissions requirements of the more prestigious colleges and universities, and it limited the time available for the development of strong programs in athletics and in the arts and in other academic pursuits. So in January of 1966, after much debate, the governing board voted to expeditiously and completely phase out the school's military program, and this was announced in February of 1966. Opposition to the change was fierce. It included his own father. Some alumni have still not forgotten and have not forgiven, but Bill calmly noted that it's human nature to oppose change. And it may be human nature to oppose change, but Bill had the courage to keep it up. And the visionary changes continued. The name was changed to Woodward Academy in 1966. In the early 70s, Woodward was quietly and uneventfully integrated both in its student body and its board. Bill developed a base of alumni support among graduates like Robert Woodruff and Howard Dobbs and Michael Carlos and Randolph Thrower that were now eager to invest in the educational vision that Bill Brewster had brought to Woodward Academy. Women like Betty Talmadge, Ann Rivers Siddons, and Kitty Ducart were named to the board. He even added some children to the board, asking me to join the board when I was in my mid-30s. Bill led a successful capital campaign celebrating Woodward's 75th anniversary, which added to the school's endowment and financed the new administration building, Carlos Hall, which is still used, and Richardson Hall, which is one of the most important buildings on the campus. Women's sports programs were introduced, and the student body grew in size and in diversity and in academic achievement, and the school's reputation grew with it. And in 1979, after 20 years of service as president, years of continuous change, Bill determined to step down and allowed the school, encouraged the school to select its first non-Woodward family president. Had it not been for the visionary and courageous leadership of Bill Brewster, I'm not at all sure that Georgia Military Academy would have survived. Because of his courageous leadership, the school not only survived but grew in quality, reputation, diversity, and impact in ways that neither Bill nor any of us could ever have imagined. Now back to the obituary that Bill wrote. One line in that obituary says, quote, "It might be said that Brewster founded Woodward Academy." And I would say that it not only might be said, it should be said. So as we celebrate Bill's life, I would make two final observations. First, on Sir Christopher Wren's tomb at St. Paul's in London is the simple inscription about the great architect. Quote, "If you seek his monument, look around you. If you seek Bill Brewster's monument, walk out of this campus and look around." But second, it's not just the school. When Bill's grandfather, John Charles Woodward, died in August of 1939, he was eulogized by John Temple Graves, who concluded his eulogy with these words: "When death came to John Charles Woodward, his monument was already set in brick and stone. In generations of young men who led forth, in a noble tradition lifted, a great name was established." So if you would see his monument, look at the thousands of lives of young men and women that Bill Brewster touched and transformed for the better. Last year, my GMA class of 1961 celebrated its 50th reunion. For months, you'd spend half the day clearing out the emails from our classmates who were talking about what they wanted to do. Did we want to have a golf tournament? Did we want to have a party? What were we going to wear? But one thing we knew, we wanted to visit Bill Brewster. So on a beautiful Sunday morning on May the 29th, 2011, we all gathered with Bill. He joined nearly 50 of us, many of whom hadn't seen him in years. He remembered us all. He joked about every demerit he had ever watched us walk off. And that group included a former United States senator, men who had concluded distinguished military careers, a famed statistician at Mayo Brothers, the former Supreme Court correspondent for ABC News, leaders in the profession, successful businessmen, teachers and educators. They were all there to say thank you to a man who had transformed their lives. That group and thousands more like them are Bill Brewster's monument. Bill not only embraced the future, but he created the future by the lives he touched and the school he built. Praise be to God for the life of William R. Brewster, Jr.